What's going on, everyone? Alan here, aka the Bird Bay, and in this video I want to talk about how to get your parrot to stop biting you, how to stop your parrot from biting you. Now, this is one of the questions and a lot of the comments and complaints that I see from a lot of new bird owners or existing parrot owners that might have rehomed their parrot. And they say, I love my, new feathered friend, but whenever I try to go pick him up, he bites me, or if it's anyone that's not me trying to hold my parrot, he bites out of the person, and I don't want that. How do I make my parrot more tame? How do I keep my parrot from biting me? And really, this is really what inspired me to make this video here and talk about that subject. Now, as you guys probably know, Elfie, the Senegal parrot by now, he is a bird that I got who was rehomed around 8 years old, 7 years old, a few years back. And when I first got him, I was told that he's really nippy around his cage and he tends to prefer women because his previous owner was a woman, and then whenever the husband tried to come around, he would bite the husband and only would let the woman touch him, and she would usually pet him through the cage. So I kind of knew this going forward, but when I got him, his personality was super I wouldn't say super tame, but he was really tame, really friendly, wasn't a biter up front, so to speak. But a few days passed, and what I noticed was whenever I went to go try to pick him up, before you know it, he would take a big bite out of me, and it would hurt, and he would do it with intention. He would bite his beak onto me, and he would bite with intention. He'd be like, "Arr," and he would be grinding his beak, and it hurt so bad. And I was like, okay, well, obviously I can't have this. So then what I did with Elfie is, you want to start off with making sure that he is eating the proper diet. Your parrot's eating the proper diet and it's getting enough sleep. So when I first got Elfie, he was eating mostly like a seed mix of various different seeds, which tends to have a lot of fat. But in nature, parrots need fiber. They need veggies. They graze for nuts and seeds, but then they also need to get protein. So I switched them over to a formulated pelleted diet, and I made sure that when he was sleeping, he was getting 12 hours, his cage was covered, and that was a start, right? So make sure that your parrot is good diet, good sleep to start, so that we can tick that off the list. Once that's good, we have to understand that also it's going to take time for your parrot to get used to you. When you first bring him into a new scenario and he doesn't know who you are, maybe he came from a pet store, maybe he came from a breeder or wherever he came from, he's not going to know who you are, so it takes time to acclimate. Now, one of the mistakes that I talk about with Elfie is I try to do too much with him too fast, and not knowing that he was a super shy and reserved bird. He still kind of is, but he's a lot better. I open him up to new experiences. With that being said, that was happening. I was putting him on my shoulder. I was trying to take him on with me around the house. And I remember when I would flick the light switch on, he would kind of get scared of a light turning on. I'd be like, oh my God. And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, maybe I got to take a step back. So try not to do too much too fast. Just let them get used to you for the first few days you have them. Don't try to handle them too much. And then from there, make sure that you start with the basics: diet, sleep, like I mentioned. And we have to understand that parrots, when they bite, they do it to communicate. They bite each other to communicate. When it's something, it's a natural behavior, and we have to understand that parrots aren't tame like cats and dogs. So when a parrot in the wild wants to communicate to another parrot, I don't want you to do something, well, they bite to say, hey, back up, I'm serious. And with us, they don't know any better unless we prevent the bite altogether or we remove that behavior altogether. So that's really what I want to talk about. And what you can do to make sure that behavior kind of starts going away is understand that parrots bite to communicate, and usually they're going to bite because they're scared, they're mad at you, and some parrots, they're feisty little ones. They will bite for attention. Like if you're not paying enough attention to them or they get jealous, they'll bite you. So those are the main categories I've seen of parrots biting. And I will say that during the springtime of the year, which is kind of where Elfie is now, end of May, beginning of June, kind of where it is now, he gets hormonal. And parrots, when they become adults, when they're young and they're babies, they're cute and cuddly, but then they reach a certain age, around 2 or 3, they start transitioning into adulthood. They get hormones, they get more aggressive, and sometimes that freaks people out. It happens to all parrots. So if it's like, the spring and your parrot is all of a sudden being nasty toward you, doesn't want you to pick him up, being aggressive, I'm right there with you. Alfie does that to me as well. I was telling my girlfriend the other day, I would just be hanging out typing on my computer, and I look over at Alfie and he doesn't like me staring at him, so then he gets into his defensive lunging position, and then he'll lunge at me in his cage just because I'm looking at him, and I'm like, wow, look at this little tough guy. And that's just because, his cage he sees as his property, his nest, and maybe by me staring at him too long, it's seen as threatening. But as soon as I get him out of the cage, he's good, he doesn't bite. And then I'll give you another example. So I haven't been bitten by Alfie for months. I honestly lost track. But the other day we were hanging out on the couch and I was watching TV and I was going like this to Alfie. I was like, all right, Alfie, you ready for a fun train? Woo! And I was just doing this. And he was like kind of chirping and having fun as he was doing this. And then I lost track of what I was doing because I started watching the TV and I kept doing it. And then out of nowhere, I get a little bite. It wasn't a hard bite. It was just a bite to let me know, hey, I don't like you to do that anymore, and there's no other way for me to tell you you're getting on my nerves than to give you a little nip, a little bite. So that's a perfect example of when you do something that a parrot isn't comfortable with or doesn't like, they bite. Now, the best thing to do altogether is to remove the bites by not triggering the bites. So if you are, going about your ways and you notice that when you do certain things, maybe it's jamming your hand in the cage to try to pick them up and getting your bird to step up. As soon as you do that, they bite you. That's basically them saying, hey, I don't want you to do that, and they bite. So try not to, backtrack your steps to see where the action is starting from. And I had a girl that I was speaking to who had a conure that she had just gotten, and it's another example, and it would just bite her. She would let it out of its cage on its own. It would bite her when she would pick her up, or it would only like her, not her husband. And I said, well, what are you feeding your parrot? And whatever the parrot was eating before, the conure, that's what it was eating. So I said, dude, change the diet of your parrot, give it a week or two, and let's see if it changes. Sure enough, she just changed the diet of her parrot was eating, and his behavior improved a lot. Eating certain foods, like humans, we eat certain foods, it makes us cranky, it makes us lazy, it makes us not in the best moods. Same thing for parrots, right? So little sidetrack conversation there, but back to the point, try to not trigger the bites and be very observant of what you do to trigger that behavior so that you prevent it from happening altogether. Because if I'm not doing this to Alfie, I'm not going, Alfie, you ready for train? Woo! If I'm not doing this to him all the time, he's not going to bite me because I'm not doing anything that he doesn't like. So the next point, aside from that, is to make sure that when you handle your parrot, and this is a trick that I did, every time, if your parrot's just biting you because you just got him or it's very aggressive around his cage, wait for the parrot to calm down, walk over, and when you walk over, try giving him treats. This is what I did with Alfie to stop him from biting me. I would walk over and I would give him treats. Why? Because I want him to associate me with positive reinforcement. Well, positive reinforcement would be a treat that he really likes. I would go over every time he'd see me, I'd say, hey buddy, good bird. I'd give him a treat, and he would be happy. So when I came around, he would be excited for me to come by because it's like, oh, the peanut man's here, the treat man is here, and he would run across his rope and wait for his treat and then let me pet him. And what else I did is when I would pick him up, what would happen is I would pick him up off of his cage. Once I had him in my hand, he would then proceed to bite me, basically saying, I don't want you to pick me up. So what I did is I would have a treat, I would ask him to step up to my hand, and as soon as he stepped up, I would give him a treat. Again, more positive, see, like he thinks I have a treat. More positive reinforcement, so that every time I came to pick him up, he would say, oh, I'm getting a treat, and until eventually it became second nature and the relationship developed over time. So that's another example of what you can do with positive reinforcement to get your parrot to stop biting you. And aside from that, another big concept that I would say that was really going to help your parrot from biting people altogether, and especially strangers. Sometimes if you ever see parrots that are like one-person birds, this usually means that they're not as socialized most of the time, meaning that only one person handles them, and then the bird naturally develops a bond with one person. It develops a bond with one person, and it doesn't like anybody else except from his bonded mate or bonded pair or favorite person to pick them up. So what I would do for that is whenever I have guests over or friends, first thing I do before they interact with my parrot, I say, here, give them a treat. And it's funny enough, when Alfie sees guys, he's like on defensive, high alert. And then my friends give him a treat, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, strangers mean treats. And then he's in a good mood, and then he lets people pet him. And this is what I also did to reduce biting altogether from strangers, and that's something that I would recommend as well. Socialize your parrot, have different people handle them, lead with positive reinforcement. Whenever you have your parrot step up to somebody else, have that person give them a treat, and maybe if it's clicker trained, click, and there we go. And we start reinforcing positive behavior in association with socializing and stepping up and not biting people, right? And with that being said, the next best thing that I would recommend for preventing your parrot from biting you is to make sure that you are building a bond with your parrot over the long term. You know, you're doing things that it likes, you are spending quality time with your parrot, whether that's just hanging out on the couch for a couple, 20, 30 minutes a day, maybe even more, scratching him, her, giving him treats, trick training the parrot, practicing spending quality time and focused attention on your parrot. That's all gonna help. And just make sure you reduce situations where the parrot gets intimidated or it gets scared. And that's, all that positivity is going to overshadow the natural desire to want to bite or to bite to communicate. And that's kind of what I've done with Elfie, so that's my recommendation there. Let me know what have you done to try and have your parrot stop biting you or other people. What do you feel like has worked, what hasn't worked, and just think about some of these tips that I mentioned here in this video. And with that being said, make sure to check out Alfie and I's Instagram in the description section below. Let me know what topic you want me to cover when it comes to parrot training, taming, all that good stuff in the comments section below. And don't forget, there's also going to be a description to a free Facebook group for you to collaborate and ask questions to myself and other parrot owners that are out there that just want to form that community. And with that being said, come here, buddy, step up, good bird. Alfie and I are signing out for today, and we will see you guys next time, huh, buddy?